morning. This is the Assembly Enterprise Utility Oversight Committee meeting of January 16, 2020, 11 a.m. We'll get started with the roll calls, starting with Mr. Dyson.
Dyson.
Rob Heflin, purchasing.
Alex Lipka, Chief Fiscal Officer.
Mark Rogoff, Senior Consultant with Geosyntec Consultants.
Mark Spafford, SWS.
Christopher Constant.
Forrest Dunbar.
Felix Rivera.
Meg Zalatel. Crystal Kennedy.
Pete Peterson.
John Weddleton.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Austin Quinn Davidson.
All right, so we have two items on the agenda and then other businesses to be determined. The first item is a waste energy presentation from Solid Waste Services. And Mr. Spock.
So I guess I'll just flip it out to everyone. We've gone over the presentation before a couple times with this body, but I know that there was some questions at the last meeting we had about actually the feasibility study that we're going to have Dr. Rogoff talk about here today. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't want to talk about the work that we did in the pre-feasibility study first. So we can either talk about and have Mr. Rogoff or Dr. Rogoff talk about or present on the pre-feasibility study and kind of rehash everything that we've done a couple times, or we can just go right into the implementation study or the feasibility study and talk about that, the work we're doing right now.
We're 10 minutes in, and we have another presentation. So from a time management perspective, I think you have to leave.
Okay, so we'll do we'll talk about the feasibility study.
Can I ask a timing question, Mr. Constant?
Sure.
Are many members going to the luncheon?
Which luncheon?
ACBB, and it's at the Denina, and I think we're supposed to be there. It's
Convention
today
and
at
Visitors
noon.
Bureau at noon.
But if we don't get there by, they kept threatening, if you don't get there by 11:55, they give away your seat. So I just wanted to throw that out there if there are a lot of members going.
Someone have to do this office text information, or I can send her an email.
Send someone an email?
I'll
Okay,
send
yeah,
an
because
email really quick.
anyway, I
Okay.
just wanted everyone to know.
The email will have to
People
leave.
might bail. and-
So
Time is important.
So we'll talk about the feasibility study. We'll have Dr. Rogoff will obviously present on what we're going to be doing as part of this effort, and then obviously feel free to ask questions at any point in time. Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. So if you flash back to September when I was here the last time, we were presenting on the pre-feasibility study, which was essentially the white paper on technology and the pro forma model. And we ended with a series of recommendations or findings and recommendations which came to the conclusions that a waste energy plant might be feasible for the municipality. We made some conclusions as far as waste flow, energy pricing, and things of that nature. Those are like, you would say, the 30,000 foot level. And so here we are now starting on the feasibility approach. And it's essentially trying to develop, if the municipality wanted to move forward on the project, what are the policy issues, what are the regulatory issues, what are the pricing issues. It's all these key questions and trying to see if we can get some preliminary conclusions on that and go back to the original folks that we had talked to on the pre-feasibility approach. I'll go through all these little bars, these little circles up there. The aim in the end is to get a series of questions answered about the potential project. And all those are, what kind of data is necessary if the municipality goes forward? What's the schedule? How much time is it going to take to actually accomplish some of these items on the list here? And then how much money is it going to take if you decide to move forward on it? What's the budget number that Mark would request you if you move forward on this in March? So I'll go through each of these items. They're all six are very, very important, I think, in looking at all of the projects that I've worked on. It's kind of like a lessons learned. You know, I'll go to the top one. The top one on their project site. We're going to be looking at. We're not going to actually do a project site analysis, but we're going to look at all the kind of key questions. What kind of data is important to pull and collect, and how much time is it going to take to identify kind of a fatal flaw? Are there any particular fatal flaws in any of the potential project site? Procurement strategy. So procurement and a number of these items. At the beginning of this week, we had an all-hands meeting with all the key department directors for the municipality. So we asked some pretty deep questions as far as policies that that Anchorage has, potentially that would impact this project. What kind of process changes are necessary? How much time is it going to take to actually get some of these things accomplished just within the municipality itself? And so we got very good participation, and we got really good answers, I think, and we'll be following up over the next couple of weeks with some more detailed questions and all that. All those will go into the findings and try to come up with essentially a roadmap, or I call it a game plan, if the municipality went forward. Procurement, trying to ask questions on how this thing would actually be accomplished. What kind of procurement document would be necessary? What kind of model that we could use that Anchorage has used before for other large capital projects? Do they make sense, or is this kind of a newbie? Is this something kind of different than the norm? Energy pricing. We went back and we had a pretty detailed meeting with the electric co-op,
Chugach.
George. It was a really good meeting. I was more than mildly surprised. Typically, when I have these initial meetings with the utility, the electric utility, usually it's really we don't want your power. We're not really sure we want your power. We have enough power. We're going to give you the lowest common denominator price and go away. And they were extremely positive about working out an arrangement with the municipality, and I kind of asked how long would it take to do a memo of understanding, at least not the contract itself, but a memo, and they said within a month. And I was pretty surprised about that. So that's a real positive, I think, that you have a potentially willing buyer for the power from this plant. Permitting process. We spent pretty much half a day with ADEC, the head of the air branch for the state, and he went through a detailed description of the permitting process that you all would have to go through. The biggest concern in one of these plants is to get what they call a construction permit that deals with all the air issues with that. The agency has been given authority from US EPA, so we would only have to go to the state agency to get approval. It was extremely positive. We got an idea of how long it would take to collect data on a site that would be selected, how long it would take, how long the regulatory process would take, how much money it would take. So we got pretty good answers, I think, on that. We'll follow up with them over the next couple of weeks as far as modeling, what kind of models are necessary. Is it something different? It looks like it's pretty straightforward as far as getting the permitting. Waste flow. We've talked to a number of different communities, and we have a lunch after this meeting with the folks in Matsu to talk about potential partnering on waste flow from that borough. I think we'll follow up with Kenai further. We also have talked to folks via telephone for Southeast Alaska. I don't know if that all will work out. I don't know if the waste could be barged in quite easily, but we're talking to quite a number of those folks and see if, as far as this roadmap, maybe a study needs to be done if the economics make sense to bring that waste up here. Financing plan. We had an excellent meeting with your finance director, and typically on these projects, we start from square one, and that means there's no bond counsel, there's no financial advisor. The municipality has folks on board that are willing and able to develop, if we're further along, a financing plan for this particular project. So that was actually plus. That actually added, we lost months, I think, in the implementation. That actually helped us out a lot, I think, knowing that folks are on board and willing. They're able to put a financing plan within 1 to 2 months. So that was actually pretty good to get to that size. So the last one in the line, and almost it's the most important, is public engagement. If you move forward on this project, you need concurrence I think, from the public that you've picked the best site, and you actually have been transparent in the things that you're saying about how the plant's going to work, short term and long term. And so part of this effort in the roadmap is actually to develop a game plan for a public engagement outreach program. And that's it.
So I have two questions already. Ms. Zalatel, please.
Thank you. So I appreciate this roadmap, and it's really helpful to see the 7 items here. Are these also analyzed in the context of when it may not make sense to move forward with waste-to-energy, or does this presume a waste-to-energy project of some sort will go forward?
We have made no assumptions that the project is going to move forward. That all we're trying to do is saying, here's all the key issues and here's how much time it's going to take. So when we come back in March for a presentation, you all have to make the decision to say, is this something that you want to move forward on?
If I may follow up with Ms. Chair, but will your expertise be used to analyze maybe the other, like the do nothing option, or how what you found weighs against the other options?
I think that'll be something that would come about after we have this roadmap, right? And there's going to be all the different tasks that are going to be laid out. That would be one of them. It's obviously a comprehensive financial analysis that we would be able to bring back to this body and say, hey, what do you want to do at this point? And you have to remember that, so let's say, for instance, in March, you guys say, yes, you can start moving forward with the different tasks that are involved. Each time that we do an RFP, or each time that we move forward with one of those actions, you guys are going to have the opportunity to say yes or no.
You're stepping on me. You've gone one step already past me.
Okay.
I'm back here. We have Dr. Rogoff's report. Is there going to be, do you have a plan, or to have other folks with expertise weigh that against what other options? I'm kind of thinking like an environmental impact statement, I don't know, where there's always the weighing of the do nothing option, and then what are all the alternatives? There might be a preferred alternative, but what are all the alternatives? I don't have that expertise.
Right.
I'm not an economist. I'm not all the different things that are there, and I think this is such a big thing. So March feels, 1, really tight to me, and 2, I need this intervening step so that I can go and talk during public engagement. Like, what else did we consider other than this, and why this is the way forward, or something else? So I feel like there's this intervening step I'm missing.
Can I rephrase or add something to that question?
Sure.
What are you delivering in March?
It's the roadmap that we just talked about. So basically, it's
nothing more, nothing less than that.
It'll say, like, if you want to get to a point where you have bid-ready documents to submit to different vendors to build something like this, these are all the steps that you're going to have to take.
So then, if we want a comparative analysis of various options, not including this, or just this is one, but there are other
Right.
steps where we could extend the life of the landfill and achieve these policy goals. How would we go about getting that?
That's a task that we add to this roadmap. If that's something that this body really wants and is necessary to help us make a decision about moving forward, then
I mean, that could be
we'll
the
put
very
that in.
the very next step.
Right.
Very next, after this or before that?
After this.
Mr. Dunbar is in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that my concerns are similar to Ms. Zolatel's, and it's been hard in this process to sort of figure out when we're supposed to be asking the right kind of questions, if that makes sense. And I voted to provide the funding to go forward with this kind of study, so I appreciate that. I have received my first sort of, we all receive public feedback, and I got my first really substantive message on that. I just forwarded it to you. I meant to do it earlier, but it was earlier this week. Someone I have a lot of respect for said, absolutely do not do this, and laid out the reasons. And because you're here, I want to ask you just a couple of the points that they made. So the first is, they asserted that while it's true, and here you say that 75 of these have been built, that a number of them have been basically shuttered or are basically laying idle because they haven't proven to be economical over the long term. So I'd like you to speak to that, if that's true or not.
Okay, so I think when we talked about in the report, there's all different types of technologies across the board. The ones that they're probably alluding to were what they call plasma arc gasification. It's number of vendors like Westinghouse have recommended that it's coming out of the space program, okay? They use different type of plasma electrodes that incinerate the garbage at very, very high temperatures. A number of vendors tried really, really hard to get that thing to work. In fact, there was a plant in Canada that the province actually invested a lot of money in. In fact, large multi-billionaires invested a lot of money, and it just didn't work. It's just not. And one of the things that I talked about is there's a whole series of these technologies that kind of didn't work. Everybody has tried their different mousetrap to see if it works. What I recommended was a technology, mass burn technologies, that's been around for over 50 years, and it's been done by 2,600 other companies around the world that's commercially proven.
So none of those have been shuttered in the United States? Okay. The other point would be, and again, I apologize, I'm sure this is somewhere in the, you've given us different documents over different times, this is in there, but the plan for, you burn these plastics, you end up with really, really highly toxic chemicals, and we are going to capture that, or the vast majority of it, although not all of it, it's impossible, and then we're going to, I believe, put it back in the landfill as a form of leachate. Is that the plan? And does it go back in the landfill? Does any of it end up in the sewer pipeline? What happens with that really highly toxic waste?
You're talking about from the air pollution control,
from the ash, I think is what they talk about the most. But yeah, the ash and any other chemicals that are produced in the burn process.
So the Environmental Protection Agency and the European Union have established very, very extremely stringent standards for these plants, and these plants would have the most advanced control technologies in the world. I mean, literally, if this plant moves forward, we'd be the newest one on the block, and probably the Air Regulatory Agency would require very, very, very stringent standards. They have spray dryer absorbers for the sulfur dioxide, and then they have different devices to collect the nitrogen oxides. They have different sorbents that are added to the flue stream.
Yeah.
If you need more data, I can get it. But rest assured that if these kind of plants are done in Scandinavia and in Asia and other countries, they have all the standards are the state of the art.
Thank you. So I forwarded you that email. It's got more specific. I appreciate those answers offline.
Yeah, and those are the type of questions that have to be resolved in public engagement.
That's right.
I mean, it's key, and not thrown under the rug. Those things have to be addressed.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's resolved in the public engagement process. That's where it's vetted. Where it's resolved is in the report or in the framework.
Right.
So next in the queue is Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, thanks. So I guess none of us are experts on this, and I may have missed some steps as we went along, but we got an email from someone who says if we put steam in there, it gets all the organics going, we'll make more methane. We do it that way, and it saves us a ton of money without really. And I go, that's perfect. We should do that. Because I don't, any of these solutions is good. So I don't remember getting all options out there. Do nothing, wasting energy, recycling, whatever it is, including like this one. Maybe you introduced us to this concept before, but that email was new to me and I read it. I mean, everything, and then maybe why you rejected those. And I assume that you went through this at some point. You didn't just say, hey, I want to do waste energy. So that would be helpful. And then just on another one that you touched on, I look and say, we got lots of electrical generation capacity in this rail belt, way more than we need. We're overbuilt. Do we need this? And one thing that points to that is we are torching methane out there. Well, we have capacity. We can put more generators for JBER, right? There's room in that building.
We've run through that before, and JBER, the base is not willing to invest any more money into that plant because of how cheap their rate is through MLP. And so basically the economics of them adding additional generation capacity are out the window because of
Okay,
that.
so there you have it. So, but now we're gonna do this huge thing to generate more energy. We already have it. It's cheap. So do we really need the energy? I mean, we do want to preserve the landfill and do all that kind of business, but the energy component's important here. We don't need it. Or show me different. I mean, that's my
Right.
gut sense. I mean, we certainly may have something to show. Those were questions.
Yeah, and I think the
Okay.
question was similar to what Ms.
Right.
Zalatel asked, which is can we get a list of options and kind of a crosswalk of decision-making, how we get there? And that's reasonable. Any other questions?
No, that's good.
No, thanks. And then next we have Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thanks. So this whole project is charming, and I'm glad we're thinking about it. So my analysis is that the immediate thing we've got to deal with is the incapacity to deal with sludge, both from that plant out there and the drop off. So that's the one thing we've got to deal with in real time fairly soon, right?
Correct.
All right. Secondly, the benefit would be, if there's a market for it, the power generation. Third thing that's a benefit is extending the dump to the site. And I think you told me 30 times. With this burn, it's 30 times longer or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'll go from 40 years to 170.
Okay, so you exaggerated, and I never do that, but okay.
I'm sure you misunderstood me.
Yeah. All right. And then the fourth thing that's utterly delightful is the potential that this site deals with waste from the peninsula and the valley and eliminates crises that they're facing. All right. So, and whatever happens with those two bodies' decisions profoundly affects the size of our plan, and so on. So, the next step has got to be the impact of that and the vulnerability of this project to those guys not agreeing or whatever. Am I right?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next, thank you, is Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of my questioning, I think, wants to follow along behind a lot of what Mr. Dunbar brought up, and that is just kind of looking at the potential impacts from our environment to this kind of a facility. So are you saying that we have not actually asked a lot of those questions yet, or they're going to be wrapped up in one of these other components to the roadmap? Because it seems to me that is a very critical piece of information. I mean, I looked on the map, to look at other places that might have facilities that probably experience weather conditions and even seismic conditions similar to what we do. Looking at Iceland, they have a lot of seismic activity, so that would probably be a good comparison, not to mention the weather itself. But anyway, it seems to me that would be a real important part of the information that we might need to be gathering here. Just looking at temperatures recently and what that does to our air quality, we have significant challenges already with meeting EPA standards. So I think that puts us kind of a level up, in terms of really paying attention to that kind of an environmental issue. So anyway, that I think is really critical information to be a part of this conversation. So I guess my question is, in all of this, is really where does that begin to get into the conversation about whether or not it really is feasible? Because if it turns out we're going to put an extra $100 million worth of seismic upgrades into a facility, then does that price us out of the market, so to speak? Does that then basically make the electricity really not affordable compared to what we already deal with? So those are pretty specific questions, I think, that I'm looking for answers to, just to really get to that question of, is this feasible?
So if I could restate, I think I heard two questions there. One is, what are the impacts of our environment on the project? And then the other is, what are the impacts of this project on our environment? Right? And there are two distinct questions.
I see what you're, yeah.
And I think would be, the environmental impacts should probably be a whole conversation, because that is the area of emails many of us have
Yeah,
received.
it's just the uniqueness of who we are up here that maybe not be answered already in the roadmap
Thank you. Ms.
or
LaFrance.
addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the March date, I mean, the decision point for that would be if we would want to move forward and what else we might need to move forward, or as you'd mentioned, maybe adding that or identifying that step of the options and ranking and taking what has been gathered so far and figuring out if there's a next step. Because as I understand it, it could be after this feasibility study, we may not even go forward.
Correct.
After that.
Could.
Okay, so what will not happen is on March, we will decide to just build it.
Do you want me to start answering questions? That's what we'll decide in March.
Yeah.
Is like, do you want us to start answering these questions that you're getting from the public, that you all have? Does that make sense? But it involves spending money, and
So we have approximately 6 minutes left for this topic. So next in the queue, I have Ms. Alatal.
Thank you. I heard of things about taking waste potentially from Southeast Peninsula and the Valley. I would really like us to be considering, as we look at the plan of financing and other things, if we're building a regional or statewide resource. We have that tendency to do that in Anchorage, and sometimes we get left holding the bag. As to maintenance, I mean, the port is a fantastic example of that, or as we even talk about substance abuse and mental health treatment. So I really want that considered and evaluated as we look at things, because should one of those partners pull out of the project, or I just kind of want to work through those contingencies, because we really do. We've had that issue come up a lot lately. So, thank you.
Yep. Then I have Mr. Welton and then Mr. Peterson.
I developed a second question, but pretty quick, is one is maybe, on your list of total brainstorming options we could do, one could be to get Matsu to do this. We get their homeless, they would hammer their out. And then they'll take the risk. But in March, what is the timer? So March is, this will be done, and we'll decide, do we want to spend $500,000 for an engineering study? What kind of
it'll be on the magnitude of questions of decisions like that.
Okay, and that would be something out of your budget, essentially you would fund it some way, finance.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the waste to energy worldwide, and I see that Japan has got over 1,100 of these plants. So they're the world leader, obviously.
Well, soon they won't, because China is adding 10 to 12 a year.
10 to 12 a year?
A year.
Well, yeah, but they've only got about 300 now, so it's going to take them a few years to catch up.
Right. But their plants are humongously big. Just think about the population, and their middle class is just asking for higher environmental quality. They don't want landfills in the middle of their cities, dumps in the middle of their cities. They want high quality air quality for their cities. So they have opted to get out of the landfill business and build waste energy plants and use the electricity for their grids, which changes their energy generation from coal fire to these renewable sources.
So just in summary, before our next meeting, we will see a list of options kind of worked through with some rationale. We will see kind of how we're going to approach the environmental impacts. I would like to see some risk analysis summaries at the end. What are the risks? What are the benefits? And it might behoove us to have a list of implemented sites that are kind of either failed or successful. Just some kind of a list that can help. And I'm gathering that there might be conversation about the Assembly kind of drafting a resolution that would set out what we would like to see in the conversation. Does that sum up kind of generally what we're talking about?
Part of that is just a decision tree.
Right.
You know, with the decisions that get met at each step and the components of it.
Okay. So, yep, Ms. Kennedy.
can I also ask, just in terms of potential sites? I mean, I know you don't want to go out and say, oh, we might put it here, kind of a thing, but because you don't want the public thinking, oh no, my backyard. But I think it would be helpful to understand more about potentially what we might have out there that would be considered, unless you just know that it's going to go where the landfill is and no place else. I mean, basically that is the decision. So anyway, so if there's any other conversation about potentially where those sites could be, I'd like to hear those.
Mr. Rivera. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, I just want to note for the record that sort of been done a little bit already. The SWS came to the Tahoe Campbell Community Council and said that this might be in this council area because it sort of makes sense for a variety of reasons. So it's been done a little bit already. I think they've given to some
Yeah,
thought about it.
yeah, maybe flesh that out a little more if there's other alternatives. But anyway, just to.
And like for instance, we met with Chugach this week, and they even offered up a couple of different potential sites, which we were very surprised about too. So.
Okay,
Yeah, it'd be
I'm
fun to see
going
that.
to pivot the conversation briefly because there was a lot of interest in an email that we received yesterday. Mark, I'd like to give you a chance in 2 minutes to talk about it.
Oh, like part of the pre-feasibility study, right, was looking at tried and true technologies. Now, there's the first thing that scares me about steam injection is that there's no full scale, it's just not done anywhere. They did a couple of pilots, which that's not something that I think if you look through what the gentleman said, it was like a $25 million investment. So I don't think I would be comfortable making a $25 million investment on somebody that just did a couple pilot studies. I've asked them a few times to get contact information because, like I've told you before, I'm always interested in looking at new and innovative ways of doing things. But I have yet to hear back that who are the people that I can reach out to at those different, the two different pilot sites in Miramar and Paris or whatever it was, California. The other thing is that we already have a gas problem, and so injecting more liquid into the landfill is going to cause the gas production to accelerate rapidly. And we're in the middle of an odor notice of violation with the state right now, and if we start doing something like that and we don't have the capacity to take care of all the gas or can't do it effectively, it's going to seem like a Sunday picnic what they're going to do to us versus what we're dealing with right now. Leachate, because you're injecting steam, you're creating more water. Two of our biggest issues at the landfill are leachate and gas. I have 3 people right now that pretty much haul leachate, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 15 miles round trip from the landfill to the turbine dump station to deal with leachate. So anything that we're adding additional liquid to the mass of the landfill is pretty scary to us. Not to mention the fact that we have to keep a certain amount of liquid depth on top of our landfill to meet our permit requirements, which we're doing right now with the system that we have, and anything that would add additional liquids or something like that to the waste mass is just not very appealing to us right now because of how we have to handle our leachate, which is trucking it down the road.
Okay, so that's just a brief snapshot. More information may proceed, but there aren't any examples at scale that we can point to that are successful. So I don't know for what that's worth.
Don't book your airline tickets.
Right, for what that's worth. So now we have to switch topics to the plan of finance report. Thank you, gentlemen,
Thanks.
for the presentation.
While we're switching,
Yep.
may I just say thank you for that analysis, but that's the kind of analysis we need on all the other options. That's what I'm looking for. That's fantastic.
Okay.
And writing is great, so I can review it again and have it in my notes, so thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
in comparison, it would be nice to have a
Yeah,
table of
in
these
comparison,
options.
but so that I can get up and
Can do
talk
that.
Easy.
intelligently.
Absolutely.
about it.
Thank you.
Well, enough to spur questions from the public to kick back. to
Sure.
you.
So do you have a presentation, Alex?
You should have a handout, which is a draft copy of the AM that's going to be submitted for the January 28th meeting for consideration on the 11th. And this is really very straightforward. The reason why we're bringing this forward now will remind you of what we did in 2019. In order to go out to bid for the work we're going to do, we hope to do to finish the PCT in 2021, we need to have source of funds now. We are not going to borrow this money until we need it, but in order for Ron to go out and submit bids for what we believe will be approximately
we're going to need approximately $56 million to finish the PCT. We need to put this plan of finance in place. We're asking for $100 million because $60 million is going to go toward the completion of the PCT. $40 million is going to roll the short-term money that we've had out there for many, many years into long-term money, which, even though it's going to cost us more money, makes more sense to have it in long-term debt as opposed to continuing to have it as short-term debt, which we've had, as we've detailed in here, since 2008, so for now 12 years. I'll stop there. I will say one other thing, that a component of this, there's going to be an announcement of a Tephra hearing. This is a federally mandated hearing. Last year that caused a whole lot of hullabaloo, when it really is just a chance for people to come forward and offer us information. We need to do it so that we can retain the tax deductible, the tax-free nature of these securities. It's just public notice that we're going to borrow money. It's all that hearing is. And that notice is going to go out at the end of January, just in anticipation of this. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Welton?
And I'm just, this is not something that goes on the bond for both. This is, it's a revenue bond for the port.
This will be revenue bonds that we issue for the port, and of course, so this is where we actually borrow the money is still open. I think we've shared with you that we are in negotiations with Federal Department of Transportation for a Tephra loan. That would still be debt. It would still be secured by the revenues of the port. It would just be at a lower interest rate, and those conversations are positive and ongoing.
Great, thanks.
Ms. Zalato?
Thank you. So we're going to take $40 million of debt we've had, and we're going to shift it to a longer-term strategy. Did I catch that right?
Yes.
It's going to cost us some money, but overall it will save us money?
It's not going to save us money. It's just financially a better thing to do. If you've got debt that secured this long-lived asset, to have to go back to the market year after year to borrow that money is not prudent, because if you have 2009 and all of a sudden you can't borrow that money and you have to come up with $40 million, that's a challenge. So it's better to match your liabilities with the assets you have. We're building a 40-year port. The debt that's associated with that should also be 40 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple questions. First, on the future financing requirements. So I understand that a future plan of finance for the entire modernization project is coming soon. Do you have a timeline?
I would say that it's soon. I think that what you hear when you will read through what the intent report says is we know we still don't know exactly what the total cost of the cargo port is going to be. Until we know that, we can't really talk about how we would finance it. We know from preliminary examination that there are several routes to that. One is adding an additional charge to every container that comes in. That's an ongoing discussion that can support a lot of debt. At the same time, there are clearly ongoing discussions. Is the state going to pass a statewide revenue source of some kind that would be focused on transportation infrastructure? So until we are this year going to be spending the year working with the cargo shippers to understand what their needs are, what their requirements are. Do we really need 2,000 feet of dock, or is something less feasible? The outcome of those discussions will really drive the plan of finance for the rest of it.
Okay. And I guess just to follow up on that point, that's a little tough because it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg scenario, because we know if we want money from the state, a lot of folks from the state are asking, what's your plan of finance? That's a little bit difficult, and I think the sooner that we can, and we have a meeting later this month that hopefully will help move us in this path. But I think the sooner we can develop a plan of finance, I think the more we can realistically ask the state and others to assist with that plan. And then second question is, so just to be clear, so I'm understanding this correctly, on the recommendation section, so basically what you're doing is setting a ceiling of that $140 million for the PCT, and then sort of maybe it doesn't preclude us from spending more than that or incurring more debt than that, but that's going to be our ceiling, that's our goal.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, slightly different. That's the amount that's authorized after this action, and anything beyond that would have to come back to us, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's more than just this is our target or goal. This is the ceiling. Okay. We can't go past this without another conversation. And several along the way, because we have to authorize the expenditures.
Correct.
Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I understand the idea that we're just basically trying to amortize this money out to a longer period of time. So do we have an amount in terms of how much more the interest basically is costing us? Is there a figure for how much at the end of 40 years or whatever we're actually being
So
paid?
if you'll remember back to when we proposed and the Port Commission accepted the tariff increase, that tariff increase modeled interest rate costs. I think what's modeled in here is that the cost of debt to the port is going to be roughly about 4%. And so right now, the $40 million is we're paying roughly 2.8%, so it's an extra 1% on $40 million. That's an extra $400,000 a year in extra interest cost.
$400 a year for
Yeah.
an extra how many years?
40 years.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I have a question though. If we're going back on these short-term bonds sales, don't we pay every single time for the luxury of selling and buying on the market?
So the short-term borrowing program, that is actually a loan we have with a specific bank.
Right, but
But
still-
yes, there are transaction costs every time you have
Right.
to extend that.
So if we're not doing that every 2 years, then there are some
It might be a
offsets.
push. I don't think it's pretty close. It'd be pretty close.
Yeah,
how
but
much we
barring any
pay.
interest rate changes because
Yeah.
of dynamics in the market, then locked in at a low rate. There are some reasons. So Ms. Kennedy.
Okay, well, thank you then. So I guess the next question then would be, so if we do this at the expense of an additional $16 million over the period of that time frame, how much cash flow then are we getting every year by reducing the amount of basically that's what you're doing, is you're reducing the amount that we're paying every year so that we can just pay it out longer. So anyway, so what's really the advantage to this? What's the dollar number advantage to this?
There is not a dollar number advantage. It's going to cost us more to borrow long term than to borrow short term. There is what is the best practice? And the best practice is, we'll just turn it the other way. You have a home which you paid $300,000 on, and you're making, you have a loan, and that loan has, you're only paying interest, and it has no principal requirement, and it comes due every 2 years. And so every 2 years, you have to figure out, can I refinance my entire home? And if the market is against you, you have to pay it off at that exact point in time. So that's the structure we have right now with this $40 million. We could come to a point where we could not roll it over, and I will say, like to the end of 2008, when the market was in a financial catastrophe, companies as large as General Electric faced the issue of not being able to roll over their short-term money because nobody had any appetite for it. Best practice is you match your borrowing with the life of your asset. That's why people have 30-year mortgages. That's why we are taking the step of saying we have a port that's going to live for 40 years. The debt that we have on it should be that long.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So just turning to Lev and the users, any thoughts on this from users? Maybe say your name for the record if you want to speak.
Lev Yampolsky, Petrostar. Don't have a formal position, but I mean, everything that Alex says is kind of normal practice, so
Thank you.
makes sense.
Just last year, this was a hot topic.
Well, I think, to be fair, last year when we heard about it, there was a concern that there was a loan that was going to be outstanding for $200 million. So I think the communication and the clarification, but right, and again, I think to Alex's point, and we do agree sometimes, right, this does provide some stability, right? So.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience out there that would like to speak up? Because I think we've finished. We'll move to audience participation then. Hearing none, amazingly, we'll be done early so you can all get to your lunch.